I was about to give the lady some idea of the fallacy of her expectations, but she sailed away as soon as she had concluded her speech. Having said what she wished, it was no part of her plan to await my answer. It was my business to hear, and not to speak. However, as I have said, Matilda at length yielded in some degree to her mother's authority. Pity it had not been exerted before. And being thus deprived of almost every source of amusement, there was nothing for it but to take long rides with the groom, and long walks with the governess, and to visit the cottages and farmhouses on her father's estate, to kill time in chatting with the old men and women that inhabited them. In one of these walks it was our chance to meet Mr. Weston. This was what I had long desired, but now, for a moment, I wished either he or I were away. I felt my heart throb so violently that I dreaded lest some outward sign of emotion should appear. But I think he hardly glanced at me, and I was soon calm enough. After a brief salutation to both, he asked Matilda if she had lately heard from her sister. "Yes," she replied. "She was at Paris when she wrote, and very well, and very happy." She spoke the last word emphatically, and with a glance impertinently sly. He did not seem to notice, but replied with equal emphasis and very seriously, "I hope she will continue to be so." "Do you think it likely?" I ventured to inquire, for Matilda had started off in pursuit of her dog that was chasing a leveret. "I cannot tell," replied he. "Sir Thomas may be a better man than I suppose, but from all I have heard and seen, it seems a pity that one so young and gay, and interesting to express many things by one word, whose greatest, if not her only fault, appears to be thoughtlessness, no trifling fault to be sure, since it renders the possessor liable to almost every other, and exposes him to so many temptations, but it seems a pity that she should be thrown away on such a man. It was her mother's wish, I suppose?" "Yes, and that of her own too, I think, for she always laughed at my attempts to dissuade her from the step." "You did attempt it? Then at least you will have the satisfaction of knowing that it is no fault of yours, if any harm should come of it. As for Miss Murray, I don't know how she can justify her conduct. If I had sufficient acquaintance with her, I'd ask her." "It seems unnatural, but some people think rank and wealth the chief good, and if they can secure that for their children, they think they have done their duty." "True, but is it not strange that persons of experience who have been married themselves should judge so falsely?" Matilda now came panting back, with the lacerated body of the young hare in her hand. "Was it your intention to kill that hare, or to save it, Miss Murray?" asked Mr. Weston, apparently puzzled at her gleeful countenance. "I pretended to want to save it," she answered, honestly enough, "as it was glaringly out of season, but I was better pleased to see it lulled. However, you can both witness that I couldn't help it. Prince was determined to have her, and he clutched her by the back and killed her in a minute. Wasn't it a noble chase?" "Very, for a young lady after a leveret." There was a quiet sarcasm in the tone of his reply, which was not lost upon her. She shrugged her shoulders, and turning away with a significant humph, asked me how I had enjoyed the fun. I replied that I saw no fun in the matter, but admitted that I had not observed the transaction very narrowly. "Didn't you see how it doubled? Just like an old hare. And didn't you hear it scream?" "I'm happy to say I did not. It cried out just like a child. Poor little thing! What will you do with it?" "Come along. I shall leave it in the first house we come to. I don't want to take it home, for fear Papa should scold me for letting the dog kill it." Mr. Weston was now gone, and we two went our way. But as we returned, after having deposited the hare in a farmhouse, and demolished some spice cake and currant wine in exchange, we met him returning also from the execution of his mission, whatever it might be. He carried in his hand a cluster of beautiful bluebells, which he offered to me, observing, with a smile, that though he had seen so little of me for the last 2 months, he had not forgotten that bluebells were numbered among my favorite flowers. It was done as a simple act of goodwill, without compliment or remarkable courtesy, or any look that could be construed into reverential, tender adoration, vide Rosalie Murray. But still it was something to find my unimportant saying so well remembered. It was something that he had noticed so accurately the time I had ceased to be visible. "I was told," said he, that you are a perfect bookworm, Miss Grey, so completely absorbed in your studies that you are lost to every other pleasure." "Yes, and it's quite true," cried Matilda. "No, Mr. Weston, don't believe it. It's a scandalous libel. These young ladies are too fond of making random assertions at the expense of their friends, and you ought to be careful how you listen to them. I hope this assertion is groundless at any rate." "Why? Do you particularly object to ladies studying?" "No, but I object to anyone so devoting himself or herself to study as to lose sight of everything else, except under peculiar circumstances. I consider very close and constant study as a waste of time, and an injury to the mind as well as the body." "Well, I have neither the time nor the inclination for such transgressions. We parted again. Well, what is there remarkable in all this? Why have I recorded it? Because, reader, it was important enough to give me a cheerful evening, a night of pleasing dreams, and a morning of felicitous hopes. Shallow-brained cheerfulness, foolish dreams, unfounded hopes, you would say, and I will not venture to deny it. Suspicions to that effect arose too frequently in my own mind. But our wishes are like tinder. The flint and steel of circumstances are continually striking out sparks, which vanish immediately, unless they chance to fall upon the tinder of our wishes. Then they instantly ignite, and the flame of hope is kindled in a moment. But alas! That very morning my flickering flame of hope was dismally quenched by a letter from my mother, which spoke so seriously of my father's increasing illness that I feared there was little or no chance of his recovery. And, close at hand as the holidays were, I almost trembled lest they should come too late for me to meet him in this world. 2 days after, a letter from Mary told me his life was despaired of, and his end seemed fast approaching. Then, immediately, I sought permission to anticipate the vacation, and go without delay. Miss Murray stared, and wondered at the unwonted energy and boldness with which I urged the request, and thought there was no occasion to hurry, but finally gave me leave, stating, however, that there was no need to be in such agitation about the matter. It might prove a false alarm after all, and if not, why, it was only in the common course of nature. We all must die sometime, and I was not to suppose myself the only afflicted person in the world, and concluded with saying that I might have the phaeton to take me to O, and instead of repining, Miss Grey, be thankful for the privileges you enjoy. There's many a poor clergyman whose family would be plunged into ruin by the event of his death, but you see, have influential friends ready to continue their patronage, and show you every consideration." I thanked her for her consideration, and flew to my room to make some hurried preparations for my departure. My bonnet and shawl being on, and a few things hastily crammed into my largest trunk, I descended, but I might have done the work more leisurely, for no one else was in a hurry, and I had still a considerable time to wait for the phaeton. At length it came to the door, and I was off. But oh, what a dreary journey that was! How utterly different from my former passages homewards! Being too late for the last coach, too, I had to hire a cab for 10 miles, and then take a car to take me over the rugged hills. It was 10:30 before I reached home. They were not in bed. My mother and sister both met me at the passage, sad, silent, pale. I was so much shocked and terror-stricken that I could not speak to ask the information I so much longed yet dreaded to obtain. "Agnes," said my mother, struggling to repress some strong emotion. "Oh, Agnes!" cried Mary, and burst into tears. "How is he?" I asked, gasping for the answer. "Dead." It was the reply I had anticipated, but the shock seemed none the less tremendous. End of chapter 18.